So I had a chance to revisit this. I did keep the bottom there as well, and I wanted to make sure that everything was a little bit more tight. And looking at the package design, we're going to need to leave some room at the top for the zipper part of the package. So I was able to condense everything, and that kind of helped a little bit with bringing everything a little bit tighter together without feeling too tight. So this is kind of an example of a light background I think could work. I think we have a little contrast here with the green and the white. If we were to remove this bottom different color, look how everything just kind of fights for your attention. But when we add a little bit of that background contrast, it kind of brings and breaks everything into two different kind of areas, and it really helps your eye break everything down. So this is so important to kind of add those different background elements. And then of course we made this kind of a yellow high contrast color. And notice little changes. I put the little mint leaf kind of over the banner just to add that layered look, just kind of thinking about how can I make this look as dynamic as possible. And I think we're there. So let's try a different version of this. Let's keep everything the same layout, but let's reverse everything out. Let's make this even more high contrast. We're going to create a dark, rich chocolate background with a mint background as well. So let's reverse this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the top portion green. Let's go ahead and get a box here. So instead of the stark white, we are going to do green. We're going to make everything reversed out. So for the mint, we can make it a lot lighter. Make that stand out. We're going to make all this white. And we're going to take our bottom here and make that dark. Of course, our badge needs to stand out now that it's blending into the bottom. And that's where strokes can really come in handy and extra borders. So let's go ahead and add a stroke here. I want to take that same green up top. I'm going to go ahead and double click that. I'm going to copy this hex code. And then I'm going to be able to apply that right down here on my swatch. I'm just pasting that swatch code in so I can match that green. I'm going to go over to my stroke panel and I'm just going to increase the size of that, so that can stand out against that other darker mint. There we go. And then we need to do the logo as well. I'm going to make sure that is white and not brown. And there we have it. The only issue here is let's go ahead and make that brown. So that looks good. That looks together. The only issue I see is the mint not being quite as readable. And there's several things we can do. We can always separate this as a separate layer. I'm just cutting that out and I'm going to paste it in its own layer. So I'm just here in my layers panel. And this is more about file preparation for printing. I'm going to create a new layer and call this a spot layer. And I'm just going to paste in place. So I'm just going to edit, paste in place. So now it's on its own layer. So now it's all by itself. So I can isolate it. And what I can do is talk to the printer about how to add a metallic ink or a spot finish on that to make it a little shinier, to have it help stand out over the plastic packaging. Because I do want to keep it a different color, and I don't want to make it orange, because when you have a word that's mint, you want to keep it that color mint. You don't want to do it a different color, because if I do an orange, it stands out, it looks great, but it doesn't make sense. It's mint, it's supposed to be green. So that's one thing we could do to get around that issue. We can also do a little bit of a drop shadow to make sure this type stands out a little bit more. So I can go to Effect, Stylize. I'm going to be adding a drop shadow. I don't like to add a lot of drop shadow. So when I do drop shadow, I just do a little bit, like maybe even 9%. Just enough, and I'm going to tighten the distance, almost make it 0 distance. And so you just have a little bit of blurring there, maybe make it 12. Just adds enough to keep that going. And one thing I've noticed that I want to do is this cookie is over the P, but there's no shadow. So it just looks like it's floating. So let's add a little bit of a shadow right here in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to get the pen tool. I'm going to draw my shadow. There's a little bit of shadow over here, over the P. I'm going to send that backwards in the layering system. I'm using Command left bracket, my little shortcut for that if you've taken my classes. And I'm going to blur this quite a bit. So I'm going to go up to Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur. I know I'm using a lot of tools, but feel free to go back and if you don't know these tools very well, go back and watch it again. I'm going to make this dark black, just like that, and reduce the transparency a lot. So we're just getting a little bit of a drop shadow over the P. If we're doing this in Photoshop, it'd probably be a lot easier. So there is our package design. I feel very happy about this version. We can of course use the light version if we want to. There's a light version and then there's kind of the dark version. So there's a few things we could do. We can add a little bit of texture to this as well. We can just draw a little pattern and have a little pattern over top. We can bring in a texture as well if we want to do that. I know with package design, sometimes it's nice to keep a nice solid color because you already have the texture of the plastic bag that's also going to be on there. If it's a very shiny plastic bag, sometimes that's enough. And sometimes adding a texture can take away from that. So I might keep it a solid color. We could put a texture there, but maybe we'll do that for another project. So now I'm ready to kind of see if this concept is going to look good on a bag. We're going to put it on a mock-up. We're going to hop into Adobe Dimensions and I'm just going to see how it looks. This is just for seeing how we like it on the bag, and if we need to go back and make tweaks, we can. This will also be good for getting approval from the client. So once they like the front, we can continue the theme and do our back, and then we can get it ready for the printer.